Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Inept General bringing you some more Total War Warhammer 2 news. And today is a big news day, guys. We just got a huge information drop on what will be coming up in terms of free updates in November with the release of the Vampire Coast DLC. And it's some very exciting stuff. So let's start off with the headliner. We had Lokhir Fellheart, the Dark Elf Legendary Lord, announced. A lot of you will be a little bit disappointed that we didn't get Malleus Darkblade, but you know what? Lokhir's pretty excited himself. Admiral in the Dark Elf army, perhaps their best seafaring warrior, and he's a fantastic addition and really fits in nicely thematically with the Vampire Coast DLC. We'll get into his details in a little bit, but in this also news update, we got a whole bunch of details on what will change for the vampire counts. And it is a lot of news, and I'm not sure how excited to be because there's some stuff that still needs clarification. And as the time of this recording, it hasn't quite been clarified, but you guys might have a better idea when you're listening to this. But it looks like we are going to get all the legendary lords of the vampire counts for the major bloodlines amongst the vampires in Warhammer lore. So look out for that, but let's start off with the headliner here, and that is the free DLC lord, Lokhir Fellheart. You'll have to get him individually on the Steam page, but he will be for free, guys, so make sure you get him when the time comes. And let's go into how he'll play and what he looks like. So here we can see the model of the olden days of Lokhir Fellheart, and let's have a look at a picture that Creative Assembly released earlier on today. Looking pretty good. I like the blades. I think one of them should at least be a little bit longer, but apart from that, he looks fantastic. Very ominous, very red-eyed. That seems to be a theme of this Vampire Coast DLC, but he looks very threatening there. So fantastic to see him, very much deserving of a place in the Dark Elf roster. So in terms of how he'll play, on the Vortex campaign map, he will be involved in the Vortex stuff. He's not getting his own little campaign mechanic, and he's not sharing one with the Vampire Coast or anything like that. So he'll be going along the classic Vortex route. And he'll be starting just south of Star Tower, where Kemmler starts. So he'll be starting around that bottom area, dealing a lot with lizard men, with the high elves just to the north of him. Over to the coast of Araby, he'll be dealing with Arkan, potentially. So a bit of a mix, and in a bit of the world it's a little bit unexplored at the moment. They'll probably, I suspect, fill out a little bit more when we get the Skaven and the Lizard Men DLC, which one has to imagine will probably be the next one on their list. So there'll be a couple of things going on down there, and it's livening up the action down south of the Mortal Empires map. Now, as far as his traits and what he'll do, it looks like he will basically have a lot of black arcs, which are the huge ships, if you guys have played the Dark Elf campaigns. And he'll get them because he doesn't have to do a ritual to have them anymore. He'll be able to recruit a black arc for every port town he has in his possession. So for every port, he'll get a black arc. He can have as many as ports he has, which is great. You'll be able to fill the seas. Now, from an AI perspective, I imagine it might be kind of tricky to kill off this faction unless they deal something in the lines of if he doesn't have any cities, those armies will eventually attrition down to nothing. But with the black arcs going around, it might be a bit finicky to get them all out the way, and could be a potential annoyance if you're playing against them, but very fun to play with, I imagine. Now, in terms of his bonuses, it looks like he will get a 50% income bonus to slave pens and slave markets, and a 50% reduction of upkeep of black arcs themselves. And with the new battle mechanics being introduced in Vampire Coast, whereby you actually get to fight battles at sea, the black arcs seem like they'll be a pretty defensive bonus in terms of the terrain upon which you fight in those battles. So basically a moving fortress with you. So that sounds like it could be potentially very useful indeed, having all these black arcs in the ocean. Next up, he has a new ritual. So the normal Dark Elves would have a ritual by which they'd be able to recruit a black arc. But it looks like because he can get nearly as many as he wants, this ritual has been changed for him, and he instead gets a ritual that makes Black Arc Corsairs, the kind of dual-weaponed or crossbow and weapon units, have fear, have stalk, and have armor-piercing missiles for a certain amount of time. It will also add a bonus of armor to the Charybdis, which is kind of a good nautical theme, the Charybdis being a kind of dredged out of the water sea monster as it is. So that seems all very long, and one has to imagine that his upgrade tree will also have bonus to those types of units, really making a viable Corsair army look like a thing that you could actually have and would actually stand up for itself and be an okay army to take around. And if you're interested, by the way, in the lore of Lokhir Fellheart, do check out my video. I believe it was the probable legendary lords for the Dark Elves. It should be popping up in the top right-hand corner now, and there'll be a shortcut into it in the description to get to Lokhir Fellheart section. So check out the lore, and I might break that out into its own video in the next day or two. So look out for that, guys, if you're more interested about who the guy is and a little bit more about his history. So as I was saying, let's get into the bigger news almost for this, and this is the changes to the vampire counts, and they seem potentially huge if what I think is happening is happening. So it seems like what they have said is that there's a new mechanic being introduced called bloodlines, and this introduces the idea of the bloodlines in the vampire count army. Now, the vampire counts have long since had different bloodlines for the way that different vampires kind of come into their own and who really makes them. So, the bloodlines are the Lamian bloodline, the von Carstein bloodline, which we know very well already, the Blood Dragon bloodline, the Strigoi bloodline, and the Necroc bloodline. Now, some famous characters relating it to the Vampire Coast DLC, for example, Count Noctilus is of the von Carstein bloodline, whereas Luther Harkon is himself of the Blood Dragon bloodline. So they actually come from two different bloodlines themselves. Now, this is huge because it potentially, I think what they're saying is you'll be able to unlock the leaders of each of these bloodlines by completing these bloodline racks, not quests, I don't want to say, but there's essentially a secondary currency coming in calling Blood Kisses, which you get for carrying out heroic actions, winning victories, assassinating certain lords, killing certain enemy lords in battle, stuff like that. So you'll be given these bonuses, and when you get enough of them, you'll be able to unlock one of these bloodlines, which it sounds like will give you huge faction bonuses and give you access to the character who is head of that bloodline. So to sum it up, really the thing I'm most excited about is potentially 4 more legendary lords for the vampire count. Now, why 4 when there are 5 vampire count bloodlines? And that's because we already have Vlad and Manfred, who are, respectively, depending on what timeline you're looking at, the leaders of the von Carstein bloodline, so we already have them in the game. But what we will get is Neferata, the first vampire, the head of the Lamian bloodline, Abhorash, the head of the Blood Dragons, one of the most kick-ass warriors of all time in the Warhammer world, one that I know a lot of you out there will be super excited to see. We'll also get Wazoran, the head of the Necrocs, and Ushoran, the head of the Strigoi, potentially. So that's 4 new legendary lords, taking them up to a huge amount of legendary lords that one could potentially get for the vampire counts. And then you throw on the Red Duke on top of that. That's a lot of stuff going on, in all honesty. And guys, if you want some lore on each one of these heads of the bloodlines, do check out my Missing Legendary Lords for the Vampire Count video. I did it a while ago, but it'll be popping up in the top right-hand corner now for you, or you can find a link in the description below. That's a lot of love for the Vampire Counts coming out, it looks like. Now, I'm a bit unsure about whether we're going to get those characters. It's a bit vague in the way it phrases it. They might be temporary or something like that, but I have to imagine they've been modeled, and it's not just a faction-wide bonus if you're going to do this. Now, it says you'll have access to the characters of these bloodlines. Now, I have to hope they're making these legendary characters, but it seems a lot to throw into a DLC, just 4 new legendary lords for the vampire counts. So maybe take that with a pinch of salt. I'm not 100% sure on that one. As I said, you guys might have a better idea upon listening to this than I did when just getting the information and recording this video. But keep an eye out for that. That's potentially a huge development for the vampire counts. Now, this bloodline thing, even without those characters, could be a bit of a change of mechanics. I kind of like the idea of little bit of a regret, like I'd hate to be that guy, but a little bit of regret that they didn't maybe fold in the Books of Nagash mechanic from the Tomb Kings into the vampire counts. I think that would have been a fun thing to do for them also, because a lot of the vampire counts are, or at least some of them, are maybe looking to get Nagash back in the game as well. So it would be fun if they could collect the Books of Nagash. So apart from that, let's move on to the other news, which is Heinrich Kemmler is being moved. Now, I kind of cover this a lot in my proposed changes to Legendary Lord starting positions video, which I did a while back now, guys. But he has been moved to, I think, where I suggested as well, or where I thought of. It's kind of obvious, but it's one of the only places you could really put him, and that is, I think, Bloodstone Post, or Blackstone Post, right up next to Bretonnia in the Grey Mountain range between Bretonnia and the Empire. Now, that's where he belongs in the lore. He's meant to be harassing Bretonnia. He's meant to be harassing the Wood Elves, and it's great to see him make that change. So I'm very excited. That will be a very fun campaign from a vampire count point of view, to have him rampaging around dealing with very different armies than you've classically dealt with in the vampire count faction so far. Obviously you have the Empire to one side, but you also have Bretonnia. You can go against the Wood Elves. You're going against dwarves, as you can do in the main one as well. But it's a fun little change, and I'm very excited, and very lore correct as well. So another change to him is that he will no longer take attrition from untainted territories. Previously, all the vampire count legendary lords took attrition from the fact that they weren't in places with high vampiric corruption. For Kemmler, at least now, that does not seem to be the case. He can go wherever he likes without taking attrition, apart from obviously mountain attrition and stuff like that. So that's a lovely change, allows him to get a bit more aggressive, a bit quicker than maybe some other legendary lords in the vampire count faction. And he's also getting a mount. He's getting a nightmare, the kind of flying horse mount for the vampire counts. So that's good. It'll make him a bit more of a useful caster as well, going around the battlefield. So all in all, some really exciting and positive changes there in the news we've got today. I really desperately hope I'm right about getting these characters. Neferata would be a huge get for the vampire count army if you can unlock her by doing these rituals. But you can actually unlock up to 3 of them in any campaign. That's the way they've said it. Now, with each one, it'll get increasingly more expensive with the currency, which is the blood kisses. So the first one will be the cheapest, and then the second one more expensive, and the third one more expensive again in terms of how many blood kisses it will cost you. All in all, some hugely exciting news from the vampire counts here, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I'm super pumped. Actually, maybe a little bit more excited for this than I have been with some of the other news coming out. So I'm very happy to see this coming out, and I can't wait for a few more details and a bit more clarification about what exactly this Bloodlines mechanic will mean and what it looks like on the campaign map. Other than that, guys, as always, guys, a huge thank you for watching, and I hope to catch you on the next one. Alright, guys, bye.